I'm the man now who I knew I could always be, but I didn't know who that was because I never took time to sit and go, oh.
It's important to be in a new situation, to have that pattern interrupt. You would be astounded at how much those 4 days will actually serve your life, your family, your job, your vacation, all those boxes. Like those 4 days are going to fill those boxes with presence. That's what I found in my journey with the work.
This episode of Sacred Sons Podcast is brought to you by Vivo Barefoot. Let's walk in a good way in the natural world that surrounds us. Vivo Barefoot is the official shoe of Sacred Sons. And Vivos are more than just amazing footwear. It is a beacon of natural health and lifestyle, proudly certified as a B Corporation with a singular mission to rekindle our bond with nature step by step, person by person. Vivo Barefoot footwear embraces the principles of wide, thin, and flexible design for optimal foot health. If you come to any of our events, you will see our leaders rocking them. And here's an exclusive offer for our Sacred Sons community. Get 15% off your first Vivo Barefoot order with the code, all caps, Sacred Sons. Go to vivobarefoot.com. Find the shoe or boot that you are looking for. At checkout, use the code all caps Sacred Sons for 15% off. And join us as we reconnect to nature and ourselves. Much love, family.
Peace, family. Adam Jackson here with another episode of the Sacred Sons Podcast. Sacred Sons, you know what I love to do? I love to reminisce. I love to reminisce around the fires, under the stars, to share our stories, beyond all the men's work and all the things that can happen, to just simply share our stories is something that I am finding as I get older here. Just like I'm finding it to be such a potent resource, and so there's many ways that stories impact us as men. What are the stories that we're telling ourselves about ourselves? What is this story of Sacred Sons? What is this mission we're on? And so today I'm stoked to reminisce with one of our brothers coming in from the Great White North. His name is Graeme Ford. And Graeme, Super G, been around since 2019. We have things to reminisce on.
Absolutely. So much gratitude. Thanks for having me on here, Adam, and excited to drop in, reminisce, tell the stories. Remember this.
Let's tell some stories. Cool. With that, and also I will say, we're in the future right now. People are listening to this. You and I are probably together right now on Gambier Island.
Yeah, we are.
Some men's work, creating those new stories as well.
Yes, sir.
So with that, welcome our guest today, Graeme Ford. He is a Sacred Sons men's work facilitator. He is the creator of Man Aligned, a men's work organization doing great work in Canada, the United States. I've seen him in Brazil now. Man Aligned everywhere. He's a bringer of stories and games, and he loves rocks. Let's rock it. Welcome, Super G.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Thank you. Man, I listen to these podcasts so often, Adam. This is like, so many of my own stories come from people you've had on this podcast, and you always say it and we always say it, but brotherhood is the medicine, right? And we had a beautiful conversation the other day with this statement, principles before personalities. And that's really what we are and what we do, they're action words. Brotherhood isn't just it's an action, right?
It's a verb. It's a verb.
Exactly.
It's not a noun. It's a verb.
Exactly. So how do we do that? And this is where these stories come from. And I can start, Adam, with my first experience meeting you.
Okay. Let's do it. Let's go there. I was even going to say, let's go through some top threes here. You know what I mean? Top three experiences. We'll start with your first. Before we do, let's take a moment to take a deep breath for ourselves and all the brothers listening and breathe along with us. Always good to take a deep breath before we go deep. With that, G, on this beautiful day, what was your first Sacred Sons experience?
C3, brother. C3, Convergence 3 at Liberty Rising. Just outside of San Diego, beautiful Jacumba. I remember showing up out in the desert, having no idea who you guys were, what you were about. Was in a bit of a dark place.
How did you even find us in the darkness? Did you find the lighthouse? What was happening?
Bro, the lighthouse was my partner at the time who said, I don't know who these bros are. I don't know what they do. But she had a sense that that's what I needed. And like so many men who come to this work, it was the feminine guiding, kind of giving the little push. Hey, check this out. So I went. I'm a rock climber. I thought, hey, that's pretty close to Joshua Tree. If these guys are really weird, I can always, bounce. And, man, I was nervous. I was so nervous. I showed up. I didn't have all the fancy tattoos I have now. And, looked around. Nobody else was saying, hey, bud, and talking about hockey or oil and gas. And I was out of my element. But something felt so right. And at that first threshold, very famous Adam Jackson words, why are you here, brother?
Don't give away all my secrets. I ask it to every gathering, every circle, every time. Why are you here?
Yeah.
And that's a powerful question when you really go in.
Such a powerful question.
How did it hit you in the moment?
I was scared because I didn't have an answer. And I was already feeling nervous. And what fumbled out of my mouth were the following words. Because I'm home. And I remember saying that. And you give me a nod and I walked into the larger circle. I remember being like, gee, what the hell is that?
He was like, that's hilarious.
San Diego was very, very different environment-wise from where I live. And
but we were in the actual desert. And you're in an actual desert valley of your life. And it was hot.
And for some reason, I'd never met any of the men there, but it felt like home. And what I recognized as I went throughout that weekend was that home again is an action word. It's a verb. It's not a noun. It was having bros around who I could say things to that I'd never even said. And I could hear things that I'd never heard. And my whole body, from a central nervous system perspective, just dropped in. By the end of the weekend, I was like, man, I don't know what these guys do. I don't know when they're going to do it again, but I'm coming back for this. This is my home. And, throughout that convergence weekend, I mean, for those brothers who've been to an event, the magic is indescribable, but very much felt. I can never explain what happens at these weekends, right? I can say, oh, well, we did this and we did that, but words aren't enough.
Yeah, it's magical and it's a lived experience. It's actual, it's here, it's present, and we all felt it together.
Exactly. It's
one of the defining differences of other, It's one of the defining characteristics of the work that we're doing. It's a circle.
Yeah. It's a living, evolving document.
I like to say a living prayer, but if you want to turn it into a spreadsheet, that's cool.
Hey, it's a living prayer, brother. It's a living prayer. And it was so much I'd never experienced. And there was a deep longing in me that I didn't know was there, that had been searching for this prayer.
Wow.
And it was the not knowing I had that prayer for decades of my life came out in sideways ways. Drinking, infidelity, all sorts of stuff. Excessive busyness was my jam. Man, never be able to get me for a podcast for an hour in those days because I never did anything for 1 hour. I was constantly doing all the things. That was my way of not feeling. Just feeling whatever was in there was a lot. And I didn't know how to do that. I didn't have mentors in my life who showed me that. I didn't know anyone who would take a deep breath. I learned those on my own, but I'd never seen it in action. I thought I was just a weird dude in the forest who would walk away for a little bit and go, am I having a heart attack? No, I don't think so. Pretty healthy guy. Okay, I can go back. So it created spaciousness in me.
Can I ask you just a question about that?
Yeah.
I noticed the Canadian brothers typically have like a very deep and also lived experience, like more connected to nature than some of us in the lower 48. And yeah, you're saying like you already had a connection to nature, but that was your isolated place. That was your happy place.
Yeah. I'd agree with that statement, Adam. I think, just because we're such a large landmass that's so sparsely populated, being in a rural environment is fairly common for a lot of these men. However, for me, nature is a sanctuary. It's a place of prayer. It's a place I can be alone. And I never realized until I was out in that desert that I could be in my own private sanctuary with others and we could all pray together.
Yeah.
Pray through movement, pray through play.
And so you're talking about, again, the principles before the personalities. It actually doesn't matter who these bros are and what they do, because it's not actually about us. Truly. We're inviting men to experience their own relationship with nature. And so I've heard you, I'm going to track some principles and just drop them as I'm hearing them. Yeah. And one of the principles is you listen to the feminine.
Yeah. 100%.
In the human form and in the form of like being in connection with the land.
Absolutely.
I would say most of us as sacred sons can get down with that.
100%, right? And one thing I used to say to my boy when he was little, when he would be frustrated or be having a meltdown and kind of be all upset, when it's too much to hold, there's only one who can hold it and who wants to hold it. And that's Big Mama. It's Pachamama. And Adam, you're a young dad. You got lots of little ones running around. If I came over right now and I watched beautiful Johan have a meltdown, wrong yogurt, dad, whatever it is. Where do we always find children after they've melted down? Where are they always? Any child, any culture, anywhere in the world, where do they go? Back to the earth. Laid down. And I'm not a big believer in universal truths, but that's a universal fact. We can go anywhere. Because when it becomes too much to hold, we've got to give it somewhere.
Wow.
There's beauty in that. And there's a flip side of isolation in that. How do I know that I can share with others when the only thing I've been sharing with is Big Mama? How do I know that? And it's things like men's work that show people that path. I mean, think of our opening ceremonies. We're all in it together.
Yeah, let's continue the thread. We're at opening ceremony C3.
Yeah,
you've entered the circle.
The nerves are still high. And then we go and we have this beautiful group prayer. We call in directions with our brother Jetty and Jetty Zuma. And I
Shout
remember
out Jetty.
yeah, Jetty.
Rising Man movement.
And I remember thinking, I don't know what this is, but it still feels good. We walked off to the rocks and we lined up and we looked at each other. And that was the point. That was the point where I was like, well, where's the exit? Where's the exit? And I don't even know where I am, brother. I remember thinking, what do I have in my bag? How do I get out of here? Oh, man.
Oh, man.
To be witnessed, to be witnessed was the hardest part. And for me, looking at the man across from me, that was a challenge for sure. But knowing that he was looking at me, my eyes started blinking rapidly. Little tears were welling up. And I didn't know why that was so scary. The only time in my life I'd been stared at like that by a man was right before knuckles would fly. And the staring wasn't that long. It was more of a this kind of situation. But I remember walking away from that back into kind of the larger space, into the shallow, and feeling a great deal of relief. Something had moved in me. And we hadn't talked, we hadn't done any processing, anything like that. We hadn't played any games, but there was relief. I'm not a heavy man, but I came in as a heavy, heavy man. But I didn't know that. My beloved at the time saw that.
Yeah, what was that relief? What was the moment like? And what was the relief that you felt? What was the burden that you got to put down for a moment?
It was being able to put down the mask of I've got it all together. Everything's good. I'm a funny brother. And I like to make jokes and play games. And I was an elementary school teacher by trade at the time. And I always had a smile. And I would be reaffirmed for that. Gee, you're so fun to be around. How do you hang out with classes of little kids for 200 days and you still got energy? I don't know. That's just who I am. But deep down inside, there was a well of grief. Grief that happens from just being alive. And every time I'd experienced grief, I'd just pushed it in because I'd never seen grief, never seen it. Yeah. I've been to funerals and things like this, and I knew, you cry now. But I'd never actually felt it. And for me to be witnessed was the first time, I think ever, where I started to feel it. And when I started to tear up a little bit, here was the shocking part. The bro across from me didn't reach out and say, it's okay. He didn't try to fix it. He just saw me. I remember shaking, trembling, because it was all there. And what was starting to come out was the piece of being able to feel. Just to feel. Just to feel. There's no right, there's no wrong. It was just there. Carrying that around with me for at that time about 3 decades had become unbearable without me knowing it was unbearable. I'd noticed, I was drinking more. There were misalignments showing up in my life. But I thought, it's okay. As long as I keep climbing, keep teaching, keep these relationships intact.
Do you think this is a common theme within men? Just gonna time travel as we talk.
Absolutely.
But you've been on the other side. You've asked the questions. You've seen the men come in with the nerves. As you've hosted many gatherings, with Man Aligned and Sacred Sons. And it's like, this is the call to bring back rites of passage experience. And what we offer initiations, which is kind of like what we're describing, just that initiation into a men's space, into men's work, as it's called.
Yeah.
Do you see that? Do you see what you had in yourself in other men?
Unequivocally. I would say the most common red thread I see with men is grief. It's
Really?
there.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Overwhelm and grief. Guys holding it together, whether it's a stance, but they're right there. They're right there. And just to be seen, to be witnessed, to say, hey, bro, how you doing? I ask that question so often. And I have to remind brothers, busy is not how you're doing.
Yeah.
Busy is what you're doing. But how are you? How are you? How's that thing in your chest that keeps you alive? And if you can't access that thing, let's just take a breath. How does it feel to just take some deep breaths? When that red thread starts to be gently invited out, what I find is stories upon stories. And often the languaging that's used is not, it's pretty self-depreciating. I'm here because I screwed up and I did this. I'm here because I have to be here. I'm here because there's nowhere else for me to go. Those are pretty self-depreciating pieces. You're here because you belong here. You're here because you're invited to come here.
You're here because this is necessary.
Exactly.
What it means to be human at this time in the situation we have come into.
Exactly.
It's like that's what I'm when I bring the idea of like the normalization of the ritual of initiation. And men usually find themselves there, not because they planned it or was on a calendar or because it aligned with their anniversary or whatever. It's because they feel called and they don't even know what they feel called to because it was missing for us. It was missing from the culture. And I would ask you to, like, in the Canadian men, is there any difference in the culture of how men stuff it down? I mean, is there something you could say about the brothers in Canada that they could resonate with?
Absolutely.
Because it's also when you talked about looking eye in the eye, I'm thinking about you like, oh yeah, you were probably had a hockey mask on and fight like lots of hockey fights.
Yeah.
That's a totally different cult,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Or standing out in the snow somewhere, chainsawing down a tree, accidentally almost hitting someone's truck. And then they come over and then you get the eyes. Right?
Yeah.
Those are the eyes. What I see most commonly that's a difference for Canadian men is the numbing technique that's frequently used is excessive busyness. It's excessive busyness. And it's having the breadth of doing a lot with no feminine depth. Do a little bit of everything and not a ton of one thing. And there's a few reasons for that, I believe. One is that our seasonal changes are so abrupt. They're so abrupt. It is very different in summer versus winter, particularly here in the Rocky Mountains. Goes from relaxing to more or less survival. When we get temperatures that are so cold, it's a big deal. When people say, oh, make sure you have your coat. That absolutely.
That's when you really need community too.
Exactly.
It's be difficult to be isolated and be like, every winter going in.
Mm-hmm. Where I grew up, one of the biggest consequences I could get as a teenager, and I only got it once, was this. If you're driving down some back road in the winter and a car was pulled over, for whatever reason, if you didn't slow down and give them one of these, and they give you one back, that was a consequence unlike anything else.
Okay.
Yeah.
Principle number 2. just to like bring it back to some principles. I mean, what would you call that? That sense of brotherhood, that sense of a brotherhood of man, not based on who you are, what you do, what you can provide, but just like that brotherhood of man that's going to like check on you if you're on the side of the road. Like that's a part of the culture broadly for all of humanity.
Yeah,
we get the opportunity to lean into.
exactly.
I love that as a teenager, because I can imagine teenagers, trying to do that. But I love that's what you felt was instilled as like one of the bigger values is to like look out for your community.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And people will often say this about Canadians. Oh, they're so polite. Excuse me. Sorry, bud. Sorry. Are you okay? Sorry. I think that actually comes from this broader community of care, brotherhood of care, because there is a very real consequence to not doing that. My car breaks down in minus 45.
Yeah.
And I'm on a back road and there's no cell reception. And for some reason, I just got a skimpy little hoodie on, beautiful Sacred Sons hoodie, but not built for minus 45. I'm in a world of hurt. And I might not be in this world because no one stopped.
Possibilities and consequences.
Exactly.
Think about, for the Western mindset, for how long that simple act of like do unto others, that Christ consciousness really has not been being acted upon. Like we still live in a world where there are people who are not able to eat. There are people who are starving. There are people who are, they're just oppressed people who are, subjugated to war.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And for how long have we kind of missed that value? And it's not missing everywhere. That's the thing.
Absolutely.
We get, like I said, the opportunity, the possibilities and consequences. We get the possibility to show up differently.
Mm-hmm. And I think in a big way, Adam, that changed when we stepped out of, what our brother Philip Folsom would describe as kind of this, we stepped into a pride-based culture, an individual culture, right? As soon as that happened, you stop checking in because I got to get mine. Someone's got to get theirs, whatever theirs is.
Yes. From the honor-based culture, do the honorable thing. What's the honorable thing is to stop on the side of the road for your fellow man. Do unto others as you would wish them to do unto you.
And honorable doesn't always mean easy. And that's okay.
It also doesn't mean selflessness. It also doesn't mean saving or being the superhero.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you got to know when it's not you.
Absolutely.
That's another part of the work.
It means just inviting the invitation in. Hey, you good? You good? I'm not coming to save you. Just checking. You solid? Solid. Great. Oh, you're like this? Okay. I'm offering an invitation. Oh, you're like this? Okay. Hey, would it be all right if I come out here, say hello? Empowering others to do what you want to see in the world, right? Because when we're walking, this is men's work for me, when we're walking our principles, people don't need to ask what our principles are because they feel them. They know them.
True.
This is a kind, honest man. Weird. I'm not running around saying, I'm a kind, honest man. You'll feel that. And I know before I became involved with the Sons, I would have to tell people I'm a kind, honest man. Not because I wasn't, but because I didn't believe it myself. So I wasn't being kind and honest to myself. So how on earth could I share that? Hey, I'm a safe guy. Hey, I'm a truthful guy. Hey, anybody listen? My son doesn't have to ask me that anymore. And I don't have to tell him, you're safe with me. He feels it. Yeah. And as a young adult, he lets me know if he doesn't. Dad, yesterday you said you'd pick me up at this time from the gym. You showed up half an hour late. What's up? Hey, bud. I went here. I did this. I made these choices. Okay. For me to come back into alignment with myself, let it be noted.
Yeah. And so you're kind of trending from honor towards integrity right here. And I would say that, like in an honor-based tribe, the integrity would be felt by the whole tribe, and everybody's role would serve, right? But now our tribe is split into all types of realities. Like we as modern humans, we live in multiple realities, whether that's home, work, party, vacation. Like there's all these kind of like boxes of reality that we put ourselves in or can put ourselves in. And because of that, the nature of us to like keep our word or to value our word, it's significantly shifted. Like most people go to work with people that they don't even really like or don't even really know, or who knows. And it's been so much of the time away from those we love.
Absolutely.
I don't even know if that, I think we're out of alignment just from that foundation.
Absolutely.
In a way.
And it's coming back to the community, right? Coming back to the community so that we can be together. And this is why, in my experience, this work is so important.
But that's what I want to say there is that I love that it's your son. He doesn't need you to tell him that you're in integrity. He can feel it. He knows it because you're there to pick him up. You're there to fulfill the things that you said or you promised. And yeah. What a great reflection.
I think we travel through these alternate realities as part of our lived experience. And the challenge, or one of the challenges, is how do I do that with the same integrity throughout the day? And this is something that the sons do in a really brilliant way. And, what we do is we share these little modalities, and they're various, whether it's, physical movement of the nines, or just taking breaths, or calling in the directions. Those become, in my life, signposts. Those are checkpoints. Am I doing this? Am I not?
Yeah.
And 99% of the time when I'm feeling out of alignment, it's because I've stopped one of those and I've gifted my energy to something else.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about being a monk and spending all day doing one thing. We're all busy. We have all these realities we travel through, but how long does it take to put my hand on my heart and go,
yeah, come back to oneness, come back to wholeness, come back to center, because these are practices. This is a big piece that people often miss. Like this is a practice because we're not perfect and we know we're not perfect. Yeah. And integrity, believe it or not, to be a man of integrity, it actually takes practice. And what that practice can look like in our sense is accountability, like making agreements and keeping each other accountable. If we're not practicing this as young men or part of our basic education of what it means to be human, because we're not in tribes, then we got to figure out ways to practice it. Because I would say all of us in some area of our life is out of integrity, just as a baseline. As I'm saying, no one's perfect. Yeah. That acknowledgement gets to be made up front. And so having simple practices, and honestly, you can't really, it's very difficult to explain what we do because it is a felt experience. But knowing that it's practice and approaching it from that mindset of like a student mind, a hollow vessel, just to like absorb and to be in a new situation, to have that pattern interrupt, as some call it, it's important. It's important to get out of the monotony of the life that we have created around us and to practice again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like go out in the woods and practice so you can come back to your life and crush it.
Exactly.
Like, and there's a block for men to do that because it's for a lot of us and the doers, and I'm one of them. It's like, I can't even make the time because I'm carrying it all. I'm holding it all the time. But the big flip on that is like, You wouldn't believe what 4 days of being with some good brothers and having meals cooked for you and being out in nature, which we're about to be on Gambier Island, one of the most beautiful places I've been. Sequoias, redwoods, pine, cedar, water. You would be astounded at how much those 4 days will actually serve your life, your family, your job, your vacation, all those boxes. Like those 4 days are going to it's actually going to fill those boxes with presence. That's what I found in my journey with the work. Yeah. Like I get to go, oh, cool. Let me come back to my own oneness and wholeness and really fill the spaces I enter with presence.
Absolutely. And I think, we're speaking about discipline and we're also speaking about devotion and devotion to self. And often in my experience in the world, the notion, here, I'm going to rhyme a little bit. The notion of devotion.
That might be the podcast title, the notion of devotion.
But has become a piece that appears selfish. It appears this person's they don't care about the community of care. They're only doing it for themselves. Here's the flip. Here's the reality. If I'm not devoted to myself, I can't be devoted to anyone else. When I first went to one of these events, I remember C3. So I'm walking around. I got a journal with me. I was told, bring a journal. My beloved said, bring a journal. You're going to want to write things down. And I was like, okay. So I'm here starting to feel emotions. I don't know what's happening. My chest is jittering. And I'm opening my journal and I look around. There's a bunch of other guys with little journals. So I walk over to a buddy I'd met there. And I said, hey, what are you writing about? And he looks at me and he goes, man, that stuff in there, that stuff, Kevin Walton were you listening? I was like, my brain exploded. I'm trying to remember it all. And I did the exact same thing. And I see this with men who come to Madeline. You see them, they're writing it down. I said, what are you writing down? I'm thinking, they're writing down, this is how my heart feels. No, it's not that. It's, okay, first you do the breath like this. And then you do this. And at first, I thought to myself, why am I writing this down? But I did anyway. I wrote it down because it's a roadmap for when I came back until it became embodied in me. So that I could look and go, oh yeah, okay, yeah. Oh, there is a difference when I do this. Oh, okay. It wasn't just in Jacumba. Because as you beautifully said, 4 days has changed my life drastically. In all the good ways. And what I mean by that is not all the easy ways, all the good ways in that I'm the man now who I knew I could always be, but I didn't know who that was because I never took time to sit and go, oh, okay, how am I feeling? Interesting. Okay. What's been missing in my life? I haven't been eating well. I've been not exercise. I've been forgetting to express gratitudes, which is what I used to call prayer. Because prayer for me, in a church, I grew up going to the United Church, quite a left-leaning church here in Canada. And for me, prayer was, okay, I got to know the verse. And I got to say it to someone or something that I'm not really feeling a deep connection to. So I started just expressing gratitudes. And through that became my own personal practice of prayer. Sometimes my prayer is all gratitude. Sometimes it's many other things. Doesn't matter what it is. It's doing it. Just do it, right? This is not a Nike commercial, but I'm just saying, just take the things that are aligning for you. And for me, things that align for me are usually not the ones I want to do. They're the ones I need to do.
That's the hard part.
That is the hard part.
You're talking about creating a practice, bringing it back to that word. It's like, come train, practice, and then create your practice, whatever it looks like, for you, for your timeline, for your family, and value that is worth it, and allow the practice even to evolve over time.
Absolutely.
As they do.
Absolutely. And I think with that, when a practice is discovered, implemented, and embodied, what you get is the truest expression of a person. And when someone is in their truest expression, they become that hollow bone. They're not holding. They're not overdoing. They're just being.
What's your go-to practice? Are you a cold plunge guy? Are you a prayer guy? Are you like, again, go out in nature, sit by a tree? Like, it doesn't have to be the daily, you know, I don't want your morning routine. What is that ritual that resets you, bar none?
It's wildly simple, and I'd had it with me my whole life, but I didn't actually recognize it as a practice that reset me until C3. It's putting my hand on my heart and taking a few deep breaths. I do it in the car. I do it longboarding. I love cold plunging. I love these other practices, but that is the one. For me, the practice that works needs to be accessible, needs to be something I can do anywhere at any time. And it needs to help to regulate what's going on in my body. I'm an expressive man. We live in a very expressive environment. I spend a great deal of time in my body doing, and I love that. And if I don't stop my body.
Yeah. And since doing that men's work, initially creating that practice for yourself, you've also gone on to study this work. Are you part of the Gestalt Institute?
So we've worked with the Gestalt Institute. So I do transpersonal counseling. So I'm a therapist by trade.
Therapist by trade, transpersonal counseling.
And here's the piece. What transpersonal essentially means, if we get to the root of the word, is behind the mask. So behind the veil. So transpersonal counseling is very similar to a lot of somatic-based counseling, with one major difference. And that is that from a transpersonal counseling perspective, we're always looking at the connection to source or spirit, or whatever people want to call it.
Wow.
And that's what makes this kind of counseling uniquely different, because we recognize that emotional well-being, mental well-being, physical well-being is attached to spiritual well-being, spiritual connection. For some people, that's specific churches, that's specific movements, but it's what is greater than myself? What is greater than myself that I'm in deep connection to? Because if there isn't something greater than myself, I become the center of the story. And if I am the center of the story, it revolves around me. I'm but one thread in the massive fabric of humanity. And we make a beautiful blanket all together. However, when someone pulls their thread out, then the story revolves around them. We get massive misalignments. And I see this both with clients, I've seen it with myself, because it's just about me. It's not about anyone else. And we know that for men particularly, being of service is so important.
Massive.
So how do I show up in service, right? And that looks different every single day. I got a teenager in the house right now. You want to know who's going and buying huge racks of ribs? Only some of those ribs are for me, Adam. But it's an act of service so that he knows, hey, I don't know why, but we got my favorite ribs here. And we got a ton of them. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. If it's just about me, I mean, I got a penchant for dinosaurs, so I'll probably just go and buy a bag of dinosaurs.
What is it? Dino Sour?
Dinosaurs, 5-cent candies. They're
is it like Sour Patch Kids?
Exactly, Sour Patch Kids kind of situation.
Sugar, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I like that you're saying the service shows up different on the daily and also in the different chapters of our lives. How do you like initiate your son towards? You know, he's about like 17.
He's 18.
He's just 18. Okay, so there's some dads listening. You know,
yeah. Oh yeah.
My oldest is about to be 10.
I know.
Whole other thing. But like, yeah, how do you orient Sage towards service, or even towards like, yeah, in the ways? I got Noah taking out the trash.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, simplest way I can is I be it.
There it is.
Right. And of course there's the importance of routine and discipline and all these things and teaching, right? Here's something I know that I'd like to share. However, and this is something I learned from my own father. No amount of words equal amount of actions. When I see him do things, when I see him apologize to my mom, sorry, I couldn't hear you. My hearing aid wasn't turned up enough. Oh yeah. Wow. And that is really, what this work has done for me. Who am I when no one's watching, right? Who am I? Am I a guy who I have a slight addiction to plants? Got a million plants in my house. People always come over and they go, God, I love your jungle. Oh, thanks. That feels good to hear.
Be careful when you tell people you got addiction to plants. That means something else these days.
Houseplants. And here's the piece. All of these houseplants, I take time to take care of them.
Oh, yeah. I know the joys of home gardening. Yeah. And also that's good for the air quality.
Exactly.
What's behind you? Do you know the name of that plant? I have one of those.
This one right here. This is a Dracaena.
Yes.
It's also called a dumb cane, is what people call it. But they're beautiful. They grow large, and I believe they're from China originally. Mm-hmm. But that's what this work does. You find the practice, you see it, experience it, take the parts that you want, create your own practice, become the truest expression of yourself, and lead by example. When I used to teach, I helped create a Waldorf-inspired outdoor program here. So me and my former beloved, my son, we were living in Sweden. We were teaching in Sweden. It was great. And we saw a job posting for this place. And I live in a really beautiful community. And so I applied, and lo and behold, I got an interview. And I went there and I got the job. And the job was it was a really good fit for me at that time because boy, oh boy, did you have a lot of things to do. So my excessive busyness was like, sign me up. Yeah. And I got a lot of accolades at that school. And a lot of kids, even to this day, now they're 20, will see me on the street and they're like, hey, Mr. G, how you doing? What's happening? And a lot of what I would hear is that things like this. You're super funny. You were so kind. You're so nice. You're so really creative. You get us to do projects that no other teacher would do. I used to hear that and go, good job, G. Good job. Now, when I reflect on that, I go, that's a part of my truest essence. That's who I am. And when I was teaching in those ways, that was an expression of who I was. So I didn't have to wear a mask, Other parts of my life, certainly, I was putting on a mask. Playing competitive sports. Oh yeah, it didn't hurt. Adam, it hurt. You good to go back out there? Not really, but I want to stay in connection with this group of friends who I'm playing. Yeah, I'm good. Standing in the shower, crying with a rag in my mouth so nobody would hear. Come on. Those are masks that I had to wear. What I learned about myself in that teaching experience was that I was teaching very young kids. So I teach them grade 3, grade 4, grade 5, and grade 6, back to back to back. The truest expression of myself at that time was my younger self. So I was a big man. I'm 6'3", but I was hanging out with little boys and girls, and I wanted to play the same things they did. I just didn't know it. Hey, you guys want to go out and play soccer? I was the teacher who was playing soccer. You want to go see how high we can climb these trees? Okay, how are we going to keep ourselves safe? How are we going to keep everyone in the community care safe? Okay, we're going to make little spotting things. Okay, we should only go to that branch. That's a great idea. Let's try it. How are we going to get our friend who can climb really well to have fun? What about our friend who's never climbed at all? How do we do this, right? Oh, our superstar climber is going to pair up with the young little guy who's never climbed before. Watch this. The other thing, and I didn't realize this till I stopped teaching, I would refer to all my students as friend. Say, hey friend, hey friends, how are you doing? And that change in vernacular from students or cohort to friends, created a community of care immediately.
Wow.
And yeah, so that's a little bit.
Yeah. I mentioned that you are a bringer of games,
Yeah.
and, even at Liberty Rising where C3 was, we've had many of those moments to climb that Mount George. There's a big part that's slippery and questionable, and we get everybody up, elders, those who are fully able and equipped, and those who are not. We do our best to get everybody up in a good way and have successfully. And that's another part that we get to practice.
Absolutely.
And especially as adults, the playing for many of us stops, and it becomes purely competitive, especially as we go into our careers and things.
Absolutely.
And so, to have that inverse experience of practicing to see what is the best way to get everyone through versus like, who's the fastest at getting through.
Exactly.
It's such a different way to relate. And you brought that game, the electric fence, now called Rope. And I love that one. It's the same energy. If anybody's listening this far, that Rope, man, we just had an experience at Prime Leadership, and they got everybody over. 2 guys had knee braces on, And in this game I'm about to describe, there's a rope tied between 2 trees. It's higher than a limbo. It's chest high, and we get everybody over.
Yeah.
It's very simple, but it brings up so much. Like I could analyze it for days. But the brother took the leap last moment, and the first time did not do it.
Yep.
First time did not, and the second time, and what happens? That deflated. Oh, now we have someone to blame. Exactly. And the second time with the timer and the energy cleared it, and then gets raised up as the hero, gets the chance to practice the inverse. Yep. Sometimes all we get to practice is that failure moment, and we don't get the opportunity to correct it or to have another actual experience of doing it again, because we've created some kind of it's born out of the desire to be collaborative, but the kind of like the hunger for competition takes over.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful, like when I think of that game, it's a beautiful metaphor for community creation, because we work collaboratively, right? We're getting people over the rope. And then it always comes down to last person. Who's the last person? And in my experience with this game, it's often the big athlete. And it's like, I can jump that. Yeah, well, I jump that. I was a high school, track star or what have you. There's always a leap of faith. There's always a leap of faith at the end. And the question is, how does the community respond to that leap of faith? Because we need all of us. We need all of us. We don't need part of us. We need all of us. And I've
say it again for the ones in the back.
We need all of us, and I've played that game countless times with age groups from, 8-year-old kids all the way to elders. I've only ever seen it not succeed once. I've seen it take a long time, but only once I've seen it not succeed. And it was with a group of businessmen in a place, Calgary, just down the road. We started the game at about 10:30 in the morning. And I thought, this will be great. Before
warm up.
Before lunch. They wouldn't do it. They refused to do it. Because with this particular group, there were a few characters who they were the single piece. They were the single string. They weren't a part of the fabric. And they refused. They wouldn't step into the fabric. And they would try, but when something went wrong, they immediately pulled their string out and said, your fault, your fault, your fault, which encouraged other people to pull their string out and say, hold on, you're blaming me. It's not my fault. It's that person. It was a wild experience. Thought to myself, if that's what's happening in a game, what's happening in your life? What's happening in your life, right?
Yeah.
So I think play is so wildly important, and it's important for a couple of reasons. One, what you stated, often it becomes competition. So people forget to play. The other piece, and I'd argue this piece is equally, if not more important, is it's accessing your inner child. It's accessing the little boy who's rolling around with you every day, who for a lot of men hasn't been contacted. Decades. Was told not, okay, you're done being a little boy. Man up, be a good teenager, be a good young man. Well, what about little G, who's rolling around here? He's here. He's literally with me all the time. How do I feed him? Because I'm feeding my body. I'm working out my body. I'm learning. What about him? I'm a type 1 diabetic, right? And you know this, but here's a piece. Little G in me, and I check in with him, loves one thing more than everything else. It's very bizarre.
That Sour Patch candy?
Well, exactly. It's called a dilly bar. It's like an ice cream sandwich. It is like arguably the worst thing for a diabetic to be eating, right?
A dilly bar.
Who goes and gets a dilly bar once a week? This guy. Because when I check in with him, he's like, hey, I'd really like one of those. It's really hot right now. All right, bud. If I don't have a connection to my own inner child, what I see in a therapeutic practice for people who have this is their inner child ends up driving the bus, particularly when they're scared, when they're feeling dysregulated, things like this. And that usually shows up in the form of regret. I don't know, I'm not a guy who yells, but I just yell. Oh, okay. Let's put our hand on our heart. Let's check in with you, young. I was really scared. Oh, so you responded in the way that you would have when you were 6. Stop. That's why play is so important, because it brings those parts online.
Yeah. One of the other interesting things to note about the games and play is that it doesn't take language. And so there's the big question out there. How do men get out of their head and into their hearts? It's like super effective to go through play. We also do it through fighting, through combat and other things, even hiking. Get out of your head, put your one foot in front of the other. It's a deep meditation. But those games, there's so much said in between, in the actions, even in the emotion, that emotion of failure, that when it comes through, when it erupts through a crowd, and it's yeah. There's no words for that. That's a physiological response, as is that winning the victory, the pose of victory. It's unconscious and the arms are raised.
Exactly. And
so these games, they remind us and they get us into our bodies in such a real way. And you keep referencing like that, 2 hands on the heart and breathe. There's so many guys that, they got 2 heads on the head hyperventilating. Yeah. And so it's like, wherever you're at on your journey, that play is such a radical tool, and don't do it to win.
Exactly.
If there is such a thing, if there is collaborative play out there, I think that this is another way to teach what you're saying. So you also mentioned safety, and you mentioned that you're a type 1 diabetic. Yeah. The safety of the container is such a key piece.
Absolutely.
It's also kind of like what men are beckoned to bring into the world, not in the over medicalizing of things, but in that way of brotherhood.
Yeah.
Like, can we bring collective safety? Like we're out here.
And in my experience, I've been a type 1 diabetic. I'm 42 now, since I was 8. Played a lot of sports growing up. Sacred Sons was the first organization who I openly shared that I was diabetic with. Sports teams, I would go and tell the coach, hey, just but don't tell anyone else. The reason why is because it makes me uniquely different. And I'd never been at an organization where all of me was welcome. I'd been on teams because I was good at something. or desired for something. When men can show up as all of them, safety is created. When something is withheld, whether it's a lie, a physical ailment, safety is compromised because I don't actually know who I'm with. I see who I'm with, but I don't actually know who they are. In order, in my experience, for someone to do that, they have to know themselves. How do they know themselves? In my experience, it took accountability. It took that other brother looking me in the eye and me going, oh, geez. Oh, geez. How long are we going to do this for?
Yeah, we opened up the C3 experience. Let's close on it.
Yeah.
You know, you've gone through the weekend, the 4 days that we referenced. 4 days to change your life, man. I think it's it's quite the claim.
Yeah.
You know, and it's quite the claim. It's brotherhood approved. The work, like I always reminisce on this. I believe in this so much because of how powerful the work truly is.
Absolutely.
How much transformation it actually brings to people's lives.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of orchestrating and actual organization that it takes in order to get there, in order to even set the table, in order to even set the stage.
Yeah.
For all that to happen.
And
the reason that makes it worth it is because it's so transformative.
Exactly.
So how did you transform? How did you close out your C3 experience?
How did I close it out? Well, I walked away from that experience.
You're like, where's the exit? I'm still looking for it.
No, I didn't want to leave that experience because I walked away with a new group of bros who I knew better than some of my best friends who I've known since I was 8. I also walked away with clarity and a solidness in myself that it was going to be okay. Didn't mean I knew what to do, but it was going to be okay. I want to speak to this for a moment. The organizational pieces that go together to put these events on, I know firsthand, are huge. They're huge. And it's a testament to yourself and the other men who've been with the organization for a long time for continuing to do this. And the power behind what happens. Like, it's not a joke when I tell people this work saves lives. Literally, I've seen it save lives. It's so important. And more men need to be doing it. Like, come. Doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter if you're feeling a great deal of trauma or you're not. Just come and experience what will happen. There is magic that occurs that's tangible, but not, you got to come and try it. I can't. There's no amount of explaining that will do. There's no amount of videos that will bring in those feels. And for me, leaving with a brotherhood, that was a big piece. Leaving with new tools and leaving with a sense that when I first showed up, I didn't realize that I felt alone, but I learned that throughout those 4 days. Recognizing that I was no longer alone, and also recognizing that I got me. It's not on other people. And that shifted drastically how I was behaving in the world. Because I'd had blame. It was so-and-so. Hey, I own my stuff. And I'm a forgiving, loving man to myself so I can forgive and love other people. I didn't know how to do that because I hadn't seen that. But then I was in a container with a bunch of bros who, they weren't walking around wearing shirts saying, I'm a loving man. I mean, maybe there was 1 or 2 of those shirts around, but I could feel it. And that was the biggest difference.
And that is another one of our values, ownership.
There you go.
Leading with the principles.
Mm-hmm.
That principle of ownership, that's beautiful that you left the experience with that. It's also, again, like the felt sense of ownership, not the idea of it, but the actuality, the actual responsibility that exists within all of us to own our ships.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Don't just talk about it, be about it.
Yeah. What a great principle to come away with.
Mm-hmm.
G, I say things like this often, but it's only just the beginning.
I know.
You know?
I do know. And
as much as I love to reminisce and to really feel into those moments that were so powerful in our lives and that live in a good way in our hearts, you know, and until we circle back up around the fire and we tap back into it once again, because it's also like this timeless thing. I think it's important to note it's always just the beginning. And like you said, like more men are being called into this work.
Mm-hmm.
I'm one who believes this work is headed right into the mainstream.
Absolutely.
With the amount of men's mental health issues and the awareness that we now have around the trappings of modern isolation,
mm-hmm.
I think it's important that we have a way, not in protest, but we have a way to come together and stand for each other.
Absolutely.
Stand for the knowingness in our hearts that we can do just a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
Even if that's all it is, really.
Absolutely. You know, it's
most guys, they need that. It's just like a 1 degree shift. You know, the
100%
thing. It's that 1 degree shift that makes the most impact. Don't come looking for that big, broad, like, wow, power moment. But it's really those 1 degree shifts that you go, you know what? I'm going to go home and do that practice. And that's what you've been speaking to this whole time. And I love the simplicity with which you received it and how you're bringing it back through, because it's simple and it's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
So take that as a challenge. If you feel the calling in your heart, go to manaligned.ca, check out Manaligned on IG. Like I said, you know, again, we are in collaboration in this greater mission.
Absolutely.
And it's beautiful to do this work alongside of you. I'll see you in less than a week. Is that true?
Less than a week, brother.
Oh my gosh. I'm not ready. I got to get packed. I got to get, and again, even for myself and for yourself to go into these weekends, it also still requires that preparation and got to clean up my own fires, got to take care of the things before we hit the road. So
absolutely.
Look forward to seeing you next week on your home turf.
Let's go.
We're going to run it back. It was such an epic experience last summer.
Absolutely.
Shout out to all the brothers who are listening to this because they joined us on Gambier Island.
Yeah.
With that, G, is there any final words, wisdom, prayer, shout outs that you would like to leave with the brothers and the sisters who are listening?
I got a lot of gratitude for everyone who leans in, and for those who haven't yet. Know that our arms are open. You're all welcome. And Maya Angelou has, you know, a multitude of amazing quotes, but I always come back to this one. Do the best that you can until you know better, and then do better. It's 1 degree. We are literally shifting the world by doing this 1 degree, because the ripple effects of this work, it's outrageous. It's outrageous, right? And the world is a better place when people come together and they start to remember. So thank you. And thank all the brothers and sisters out there. And we'll see you at Gambier. And if not Gambier, we'll see you at C9.
Remember to remember. September. It's going to be a September to remember. Join us at C9 Remembrance. With that, Graeme Ford, Man Aligned, Adam Jackson, Sacred Sons. We are out, family. See you in September. Much love.